Right, good morning. Where were we? So the first video, I made that yesterday afternoon. So this is what we did, wasn't it? We joined this together. I haven't taken it any further, but then I didn't intend to. Now it's up to you to just create these enormously beautiful pieces of cloth with hand embellishment of your own. And if I say, I was thinking as well after that video, let's imagine that I gave you all 3 pieces of this, okay? Exactly the same. If I gave every single person in this group 3 pieces of this, exactly the same, I can guarantee that everything that came from that, every piece that came from that, put on a table would all be different, because you'll all have your own preferred ways of joining them, you'll all have your own preferred hand embroidery process, you'll all have your own preferred cloth thread choices in terms of colour and thickness. For example, stranded cotton, you may think that you want to use 2 strands, somebody else will use 4 strands. So trust me, they would. So I can't wait. I hope you keep posting to the group, because I can't wait to see how you all develop these processes individually, okay? It's not just about me and what I would do. I'm used to seeing what I would do, but it excites me to see what you would do. It's like if I do a process, for example, these ones, there's some of these appearing on Flickr with colour in them. Now, as somebody who nearly always works with white, I love to see how people add colour to these and how they're so vastly different and transformed with the use of colour. So this is really exciting for me, to watch your progress and to watch how you interpret this and use it to fit in with your own ideas and your own work. So that's something I should have said yesterday. So this morning, I'm going to make another 2 videos. We're going to join some of this together, and then I'm going to show you how to create this surface. Now, I love this surface, and I think this is a new surface to me. This is something I've done very recently just to try and get something a bit different within this class, and the potential of it hasn't yet hit me. I know it's got potential and I have one idea for the use of it, but I'm sure there's so much more that can be dragged out of this, can be wrung out of this process in terms of how you would take it forward and what you could do with it in the end. So that's going to be in the video after this hand embroidery one. Right, so these little pieces of lace that are so precious, and I said I was going to join them with lace in the seams, and I had this lace here that somebody gifted me. I get so many wonderful things through the post, you won't believe it, I'm so lucky. So how am I going to approach this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is cut these out. Now I'm going to cut quite close to the stitching, but perhaps not right on the stitching, maybe leaving 1/8 of an inch, okay? And again, you can damp stretch these like I demonstrated the other day when I quickly did that demonstration, using your holes on the net or the lace and using your holes from the machine stitching. It is possible to damp stretch them, but in reality, when I made that big piece of lace cloth that I had on the table in the last video, which was yesterday, so I've put it away. In fact, I'm just going to stand up and get it because it's only over there. Wait me a minute. It's only here. So what I did with this one, I made all the pieces individually and embroidered on them individually, and then damp stretched them individually before I joined them, okay? And then I joined them by adding lace in the seams, and then I did buttonhole lace on top of that to create like a double layer of a skirt. I'll be doing that today. But then I didn't damp stretch it again because all the surface embroidery had been damp stretched before it was joined, okay? So if you do, I'm sampling and I'm kind of on a deadline because I'm getting these videos made for you. I haven't encrusted this as much as I would if it was a piece, for a big piece, to make another one of those cloths. But do all your embroidery first, damp stretch it, then cut them out and join them, because if you're literally just joining them with lace and buttonhole stitch or something else, then it won't need to be damp stretched. Having said that, if this was all joined together now, like that, and you decided you wanted bullion knots on your seam and you'd had it in a hoop, then I would advise damp stretching it. But like I say, use your holes that have been set, okay? You've got a lot of lace and machine stitch going on here in places like this. So you can use those areas to damp stretch, I think, without doing any damage to this piece of cloth. Okay, so that's that. Yeah, and this that I've just cut off is going in my snippet jar, and I'm going to use this for lace cloth. I'm going to make some lace cloth with you before we finish. So, and that might come in handy for making one of these, to fill it out a bit in some areas, you know, to give it a bit more, fill in some spaces in one of these. Okay, so I'm just going to put that there. And then I'll cut these ones out, but I've got to turn off a minute because I need to just answer the door. Somebody's coming to my door. Sorry about that. Right, so I'm going to put these ones out now. Now these are quite small. If I was doing another one, I'm going to do a big cloth, I think. I've decided I'm going to actually do a big cloth like this, another one like this one. But I need to buy some more lace. I don't have a yardage of lace. I've only got offcuts really now. But if I was going to do a big one like that, I'd probably make them this big. Maybe a tiny bit bigger than that. Maybe about ½ an inch. Just let me get my ruler. You might think, why haven't you got a tape measure? I've got several tape measures, I can just never find them. I always put them somewhere safe and then I can't find them. So that way, that one measures 1, 2, 3, actually 5 inches across there, which surprises me. So maybe it would be that width by 4. No, it would be bigger. It would probably, maybe about 6 inches by 5. That's how I would probably make when I'm doing an actual big cloth and not just sampling. So really, in comparison to that, these are quite tiny. So I'll just cut these two out from here, because remember I said I've made 2 pieces on here. Now, it's kind of quite easy to lose some of this when you start overlapping, especially if it's very open, like mine are, because my holes are quite close together. There's more holes than surface, if you know what I mean. So occasionally I'll just join 2 without putting any lace in there in a seam. And I've got all this snippet here for lace cloth, which is exciting me greatly. And you can use, if you make some lace cloth, when we get round to doing that, if you do actually make some, you could use lace cloth to do this too. You could use it as your backing, as we use this lace. You could use lace cloth in the same way to create more of this. You'd be creating your own lace to use as a base for the other work, you know. Right, so I've cut them off now. So now I'm back to the stage I was at yesterday, where I have to play with these and figure out where I want them and what goes with what. I'm always reluctant to lose anything in terms of precious areas. But if you notice my edges, I've got open bits quite close to all my edges. So it might be that laying this on would necessitate losing some of those, but then that perhaps could go on there, overlap the top piece as opposed to the bottom piece. But then up here I've got a bit more of a seam. Now I could have left a bit more of that on, okay, and use that as a means of overlapping. That's always an option as well. Don't cut it quite as close. So I'm just thinking, but then that doesn't fit there without, but then again that covers over here and it partially covers that hole. So does that matter? I don't think it does. But maybe this piece. I think that piece actually fits really well there. It's like trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together. So what I'm going to do with this one, I'll tell you what I'm going to do that I've done before. I'm going to put wrong sides together. Okay. And I'm going to try and match them up as best as I can by moving them around, manipulating them, and I'm going to pin them. So what I'm doing is, right, if I just lay wrong sides together, you're not mishearing me, I mean wrong sides together, and if I lay it like that, then I've got sticky up bits. They don't match, they don't meet. So what I'm going to do is manipulate them so they do meet. So that might involve a little bit of pleating perhaps. To make, I've got my pins over here to make sure they meet. So, and then the beauty of this is that you're not going to have just a flat square piece. What's going to, so I'm going to have to move that over and kind of put a little pleat there to make that meet there. And the beauty of this is that when it's stitched and opened out flat, it gives you that undulation that we've got on here, that I've got on here. It's not flat, it doesn't lie completely flat. Some areas are raised, and that'll be where they've been pleated to fit in. Okay, it creates a wonderful surface, actually, a wonderful surface unevenness. So they're meeting now. Alright, so tacking thread, I'll tack it together just with big tacking stitches. There's my little scissors. My little scissors. And a needle. I'll get my basting needle actually. Okay. And I'll just quite low down so that I'm catching all both these pieces together. Just do some big tacking stitches to tack them together. And this will give you as well a raised seam, which is always nice, I think. Take my pins out. So I need to go online and order some yardage of lace. Doesn't even have to be expensive lace. Part of me thinks, should I do it with silk net? Silk net is so expensive. But then I just think that would be really extravagant. Now I don't know if that's meeting there. I'm just going to check. No, that needs to come up a bit. It's slipped. Right, so I've got two sections there, tacked together, basted together, depending on where you live. I've got my overhead light, not my overhead light, I've got a lamp here. It's here, a daylight bulb in it, and I've got it on because even though it's a beautiful day today, we're at that stage of the day because it's quite early, where the light, isn't it, it's best. It's kind of like a grey bluey light. So that's why I put that on. Right, so that's that. Cut that off. And now I'm going to buttonhole along there. Now I'm actually going to do my first row with this basting needle because it's very long, it's very fine and it's very sharp, and it's good to get through here because remember I've said that some areas are quite thick where there's a lot of machine stitch going on. So I'll just thread this needle. Now I'm not going to knot this thread now because this is really lacy autumn cloth and I don't want any ends showing. So remember I've got my right sides, no I've got my wrong sides together. No, I've got my right sides together. Have I done this wrong? No, I haven't. Right, I've got wrong sides together, haven't I? So this is my right side. So what I'm going to do is go to the back to the wrong side, at the area where I'm going to start, and I'm just going to put it through a few stitches on the back, just to catch it down without a knot. So I've put wrong sides together. I've got right sides facing me. And I've just gone over to the back where the wrong side is and I'm threading it through a few stitches so I don't have any knots or loose ends, and I just bring my needle up through there to the top, ready to begin my buttonhole stitch all the way along here. So I'm literally, so it's like that, it's like a sandwich. So what I'm doing is, so it's like a sandwich, this is the top of the sandwich, alright. So I'm going to stitch together this way so that the buttonhole isn't laying flat down here but is standing up on top of those two edges that are joined. Okay, so let's get this show on the road. So it's better to do it like that so that it's towards you, and then just tiny little buttonhole stitches all the way along. Now you're going to have to make sure you catch, because remember you've pleated this to make it fit together, you've manipulated it anyway, so you're going to have to make sure you're catching everything here. So you may have some areas where you've got more lace or more fabric that kind of fold over under the stitch. That doesn't matter, because you won't even notice that when you've added your second row and you open it out again. Okay, so it's all the way along here. I'm doing these quite small. This is delicate, it requires delicacy. I'm going to do it all the way along. We've still got the workmen outside digging up the road. They were making so much noise yesterday. I was having panic attacks all day. They'd wake my husband up because he's been on nights. And you know, he slept right through it, he didn't hear a thing. So that was a relief. I was on pins, you know, that he'd get up really early and not have enough sleep because he was working last night as well. I just got an itchy nose. Won't be a sec. Now you may find I've just had to stitch through one of the buttonhole edges of a hole there, but that doesn't matter, because it just means it's all going to be integrated. There's going to be nothing that stands out like it's separate and doesn't belong. So I'm nearly all the way along. Now it's not going to be the easiest job in the world to get the tacking out of this, because it's Gutermann thread. And I've stitched this with Gutermann thread. The only bonus is that it's off-white, the one that I used to tack, and the lace has been made with white, so I might be able to see it a bit better. So I'm nearly at the end. Just one more stitch. Now don't forget, this is the right side of this piece of work, okay? This is the right side, right? So I can't finish that off on this side because it's the right side. So I take it down through that seam to the back again, like that, and fasten it off on the reverse. I'm just going to stitch a couple of stitches through. I've actually got a fabric insert there, that's one of those areas. So I'm just taking it a couple of times through that fabric insert just to fasten it off, and then I'll cut it really close because I don't want any tails showing on the front. Okay, so now I'll change my needle to a blunt needle, if I can find it. Blunt, 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 which is just a cross stitch needle. And I'll rethread my needle. Well, I'll rethread this needle. I'm just going to have to get a coffee as well, I'm really dry. It's not that late here. I started this one early. What time are we on? Yeah, it's 10 o'clock, but I started about, well, however long ago this video is. Right, so then back to the beginning. Started here, didn't I? No, I didn't. I started over here. Right. So, yeah. So at the back, at the beginning, where I started my first row, the end I started my first row, I'm going to start my second row. Just feed it through a couple of stitches again on the back and secure the thread so that I haven't got any knots, and then bring my needle through to the front again, ready to start the second row of buttonhole stitch. But the first thing I'm going to do is try and take this tacking out, which isn't going to be easy unless I've got it right. I can see it in places, but I can't see where it starts and finishes. So if I snip it there, that might help further down the line. I'm really struggling to see this. I just can't run the risk. I don't know if I've said it in this class, but I only ever tack with white and off-white. And the reason for that, there, I've got that bit. The reason for that is because even if you pull it out, if you take your tacking thread out when you're finished, you can leave tiny fibres behind. And from my point of view, I take a lot of pictures of my work for promotion and stuff like that. one dark fibre would scream at you from an image if it was on this, you know what I mean? So that's why I only ever tack in white and off-white. Right, so now I'm going to come back along and I'm going to buttonhole through the loops of the previous row. Now this you might struggle a little bit with this because sometimes it can be hard to see them because you've got such a lot going on this surface, but they are visible, and I think cotton abroad is a different thickness and it has a different finish to it than the actual pieces of lace, so that's helping me here. So if I go all the way along here, and I'm creating like a seam, a surface seam of buttonhole stitch here, and it's not taking me as long as I thought it would actually, because I can easily identify what's cotton abroad and what isn't. And I will pull in a minute when I finish this, but I just think because I'm moving my hands a lot with the stitch movements, it does blur, and I would hate for it to blur. I mean, you can see what I'm doing really, even though you can't see it close up, you can still get a sense of what I'm doing. Oops. Go all the way along here. My last one, okay, and then again take it through to the back and run it through again a couple of times just to secure it. And then cut it off without a massively long tail. Okay, and I'll just pull in a little bit now. Right. And then open it out, and there it is. So that has created the most lovely raised buttonhole seam, and then it's so obvious where that join is. And if you did that with 3 or 4, for example, if I had a bigger piece, I could come along here with it, okay, and create another raised seam there, or I could add it with the lace within the seam, which is what I'm going to do next, but I'm going to start a different video for that because I don't want this file to get too long.